the 10 process documents that will save your business, and the disasters I've seen without them. Hey there, welcome back to Small Business Risk. I'm glad you're here. My name is Scott Lindsay, and today we're diving into something that, honestly, I wish someone had sat me down and explained when I was starting out in business. The 10 process documents that literally every small business needs to survive. Not to be fancy, not to impress investors, but to actually survive and grow without you losing your mind or your business imploding. Now, before we jump in, let me give you some context on where I'm coming from with this, because it matters. I've spent my entire career helping organizations understand risk, strengthen operations, and grow with confidence. At global financial institutions, I've served as a Chief Risk Officer, Chief Compliance Officer, Director of Internal Audit, and a CFO. I've worked with global financial institutions to lead enterprise-wide risk programs and to guide executive teams and boards through some of the most complex operational and regulatory challenges you can imagine. And I'm not just a corporate guy. I've been an entrepreneur too. I founded and grew an internet solutions company that served more than 85 financial institutions, hundreds of thousands of customers, and government agencies across multiple jurisdictions. So trust me, I know the highs and the headaches of starting a business from scratch. Here's the truth I've learned from both sides of that experience. You don't need luck, you need planning, structure, and knowledge. And what I've seen, sitting in boardrooms of billion-dollar institutions and in the back offices of struggling startups, is that the fundamentals are the same. The businesses that survive and thrive are the ones that have their operational knowledge documented and accessible. Documented processes. You know what the common thread is in almost every business crisis I've witnessed, whether it's a community bank or a two-person consulting firm? It's not market conditions. It's not the competition eating their lunch. It's not even lack of capital, though that's what everyone wants to blame. It's that critical operational knowledge lives only in a few people's heads, not on paper, documented as they should be. And when those people aren't available, whether they quit or get sick or just go on vacation, everything falls apart like a house of cards. I've literally held the hand of a business owner who was having a full panic attack because his operations manager gave notice and he suddenly realized he had no idea how to fulfill customer orders. The supplier contacts, the production schedule, the quality checks, all of it was locked in one person's brain. And you know what? I've seen the exact same vulnerability in financial institutions with hundreds to thousands of employees. The scale is different, but the risk is identical. Or this other time, I got an emergency call from a client whose bookkeeper was in a car accident. Nothing life-threatening, thank God, but she was out for 6 weeks. And the owner couldn't even figure out how to run payroll because everything was this mysterious process that only she knew how to do. In my internet solutions company, I made sure we documented everything specifically because I'd seen what happens when you don't. When we were serving 85 financial institutions, I couldn't afford to have critical processes locked in anyone's head, including mine. This stuff keeps me up at night because it's so preventable, so reckless, and that's what we're talking about today. So here's what we're going to cover. I'm going to walk you through the 10 most critical processes you need documented in your business. And more importantly, I'm going to tell you what actually happens when you don't have them. The real consequences I've seen firsthand, not just theoretical risk, because theory doesn't convince people, but watching a business almost go under because they didn't have their cash flow process written down and understood, that tends to get people's attention. So if you're getting value from this, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I promise I only cover the real-world operational risk stuff that actually protects your business, not academic theory. And here's what I want to know in the comments. Which of these 10 processes covered in this video do you already have documented? Are you ahead of the game, or are you realizing you've got some gaps? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you're stuck on where to start, or how to actually write one of these, tell me which process is giving you the most headache. I read every single comment, and based on what you tell me, I'll create free process templates for the ones you need most. So don't be shy, engage with me in the comments. So here we go. Starting at number 1 on the list, and this is a big one, your customer onboarding and service delivery process. This is the entire journey from when someone says, "Yes, I want to buy from you," all the way through to them actually receiving value, being happy, and hopefully becoming a repeat customer or referring others. Here's why this matters, and I'm going to tell you a story that still makes me cringe. I worked with this digital marketing agency, small shop, maybe 8 people. They were growing fast, which you'd think is great, right? But they kept getting terrible reviews, clients complaining about missed deadlines, unclear deliverables, feeling ignored. The owner couldn't figure it out because the work itself was good, like the actual marketing campaigns were solid. So I spent a week just observing their client onboarding, and it was chaos. Each account manager had their own system. One person used one Sitem, another used something else. One literally just kept everything in email threads. Some clients got a kickoff call, some didn't. Some got weekly updates, others heard nothing for a month. The client experience was completely inconsistent depending on which account manager they got assigned to. We documented one standardized onboarding process and a client feedback loop. What happens in the first 24 hours after a sale? Who sends the welcome email? What's included? When's the kickoff call scheduled? What documents do we need from the client and by when? What's the communication cadence? Who's responsible for each step? Within 3 months, their client satisfaction scores went up by 40%. Same team, same quality of work, but now every client had the same professional experience. That's the power of documentation. The risk of not having this, you lose clients during that critical first interaction. They have buyer's remorse. They don't refer anyone because the experience was confusing. And you, as the owner, end up constantly putting out fires and apologizing for miscommunication instead of growing your business. Number 2, and this is where I see businesses get into serious trouble, your financial closing process, specifically your month-end closing. How do you reconcile your accounts, review your financials, and actually know where your business stands financially? I can't tell you how many times I've asked a business owner, "What was your profit last month?" And they give me this blank stare. Or they say, "I think we did okay. I mean, there's money in the account." That's not running a business. That's flying blind. Here's the thing. Your financial close process should be a checklist. By the 5th business day of each month, these specific things happen. Bank accounts get reconciled against your accounting software. Credit card statements get reviewed and categorized. Accounts receivable gets aged, you know who owes you what and for how long. Accounts payable gets reviewed so you know what's due. Someone, ideally you or your bookkeeper, actually looks at your profit and loss statement and balance sheet and asks, "Does this make sense?" Another real-world example, a small manufacturer who discovered they'd been paying for a software subscription they'd canceled 8 months prior. $700 a month just leaking out because nobody was actually reviewing the books systematically. That's over $5,000 just gone. Another company found out they had customers who owed them over 90 days, like $30,000 in outstanding receivables, because they didn't have a process to regularly review aging. The risk here is you don't see problems until they're catastrophic. You don't know you're losing money until you're broke. You don't know customers aren't paying until you can't make payroll. Financial discipline is the difference between a business and an expensive hobby. Number 3, cash flow management and collections. This is related to number 2, but it's different. This is the actual mechanics of how money moves through your business. When do invoices go out? Who follows up on them? What's your escalation process for overdue payments? How do you prioritize paying your own bills? I tell people all the time, more businesses fail from cash flow problems than from lack of profitability. You can be profitable on paper and still go bankrupt if you can't pay your bills this week because all your money's tied up in receivables. I have seen a construction company that nearly went under, and they were actually profitable. Good margins, growing revenue, but their cash flow was a disaster. They'd do a big job, not invoice for weeks because they were too busy. Then the client would take 60 days to pay. Meanwhile, they had to pay their subcontractors and suppliers within 30 days. They were constantly scrambling, borrowing money, stressing about payroll. They implemented a simple process. Invoices go out within 48 hours of job completion. Period. Non-negotiable. Follow-up email at day 7 if not paid. Phone call at day 15. Friendly reminder at day 30. more firm communication at day 45, and at day 60, we stop work and engage collections. Also go them to negotiate better payment terms with their key suppliers to give them more breathing room. Their cash flow crisis basically disappeared. Same business, same profitability, but now money was coming in consistently and they could actually plan instead of constantly scrambling and reacting. The risk of not documenting this, you flying blind and relying on hope and faith that it will work out. You're always stressed about money even when you're making money. You can't invest in growth because you don't know if you'll have cash next month. And you lose money to bad debt because you don't have a system to chase down late payments. All right, if this is resonating with you, if you're realizing you've got some gaps in your systems, go ahead and smash that like button. It helps the algorithm show this to other business owners who need to hear it. And seriously, comment below with which of these processes you're most worried about. Let's have a real conversation about this. Number 4, hiring and onboarding workflow. This is your entire process from realizing you need to hire someone all the way through them being productive members of your team. And look, I've seen businesses treat hiring like it's some kind of ad hoc, figure it out as you go process. Then they wonder why they keep making bad hires, or why new people take 6 months to contribute. Here's what should be documented. What important in a candidate and how do they match the role you are trying to fill? What characteristics are you looking for in your staff? Where do you post your job listings? What does your screening process look like? Who conducts interviews and what questions do you ask? How do you check references, and do you actually check them? What does the first day look like? First week? First month? Who trains them on what? What systems do they need access to? What's your 30, 60, 90-day evaluation process? How do you train them, develop them? A company in the home services industry, and they were burning through technicians like crazy. High turnover, people quitting in the first few months. The owner blamed millennials, blamed the labor market, blamed everything except the actual problem. They had no onboarding. New techs would show up, get handed a uniform and a truck, and basically be told, figure it out. No training on their systems, their customer service expectations, their safety protocols, nothing. They built a structured 2-week onboarding program. First 3 days are classroom and shadowing. Next week is supervised field work, regular check-ins with a mentor, clear expectations and milestones. Their retention in the first 90 days went from about 40% to over 85%. And the people they did let go, it was now an informed decision based on performance, not just people rage quitting because they felt thrown to the wolves. The risk of not having this documented? You make expensive hiring mistakes. You waste time retraining because there's no standard approach. Good people leave because they feel unsupported. And you, the owner, end up spending all your time either recruiting or babysitting new hires instead of running your business. Number 5, customer complaint and issue resolution. How do you handle it when things go wrong? Because things will go wrong. Products fail, services disappoint, mistakes happen. The question is, do you have a system? This needs to cover a few things. How do complaints get logged? Who's responsible for responding, and how quickly? What authority does each level of your team have to resolve issues? When's a refund appropriate versus store credit versus a discount on future purchase? What's your escalation path? I'll never forget this retail client I worked with. They were getting destroyed on social media because of inconsistent complaint handling. One customer would complain and get a full refund plus a gift card. Another customer with the exact same issue would basically get told, tough luck. It created this perception that the company played favorites or was just chaotic. We created a simple decision matrix. Issues under $50, frontline staff can resolve however they see fit. $50 to $200, manager approval needed, but they have discretion. Over $200, the owner gets involved. We also created response time standards. Every complaint gets acknowledged within 4 hours during business hours. Resolution or clear next steps within 24 hours. The complaints didn't stop because you can't make everyone happy, but the angry social media posts basically disappeared because people felt heard and fairly treated. The risk of not documenting this process? Your reputation gets trashed because complaint handling is inconsistent or slow. Your team either gives away the farm because they're scared of bad reviews, or they're too rigid and make things worse. And you're constantly dealing with escalated situations instead of empowering your team to handle things. All right. If this is resonating with you, if you're realizing you've got some gaps in your systems, go ahead and smash that like button. It helps the algorithm show this to other business owners who need to hear it. And seriously, I need you to engage with me in the comments. Tell me which of these processes you're most worried about. Which one keeps you up at night? Is it the cash flow piece? The emergency planning? The quality control? Let me know, because here's what I'm thinking. Based on what you tell me, I'm going to create downloadable process templates or a structured detailed guide or potentially a workshop around this framework, around the most requested ones, and make them available to subscribers. Real templates you can customize for your business, not generic garbage. Would that be valuable to you? Let me know in the comments. And if you've got specific questions about how to document a particular process in your business, ask me. I might not get to every single one, but I read them all, and the common questions often turn into future videos or resources I create for the channel. So comment below and tell me what you need. Number 6, quality control and delivery standards. What does good enough to ship actually mean in your business? What are the non-negotiables? How do you check work before it goes to customers? This is where a lot of businesses struggle as they grow because the founder has this intuitive sense of quality, but it's never been articulated. So as you hire people, quality becomes subjective and inconsistent. Example, a software development within a bank where every developer had a different definition of done. One person would write extensive tests, another would do the bare minimum. One would document their code thoroughly, another would leave it cryptic. When clients reported bugs or when developers tried to work on each other's code, it was a nightmare. We created a definition of done. We stood up a structured SDLC framework and change management process. Now, code complete means unit tests passing, integration tests passing, documentation updated, peer review completed, and deployed to staging for client review. Period. Every single time. No exceptions unless explicitly discussed and approved. Their bug rate dropped, client satisfaction went up, and developers actually appreciated it because the expectations were clear. No more guessing if they'd done enough. The risk here? Quality becomes inconsistent. Some customers get great experiences, others get mediocre ones, and you don't know why. Rework eats up your time and money, and your brand reputation becomes unreliable. Number 7, vendor and supplier management. Who are your critical suppliers? What are your payment terms with each? Who's the backup if they can't deliver? Where are contracts kept? Who's the relationship owner? This sounds basic until you realize how many businesses have this critical information locked in one person's head. I've seen companies nearly collapse because the purchasing manager quit and nobody else knew which suppliers provided which parts, what the pricing should be, or even who to call when something went wrong. I had a manufacturing client where their key raw material supplier suddenly went out of business. Just closed doors one day. My client was dead in the water because they had no documented backup suppliers. We had to scramble, pay premium prices, and delay customer orders while we found alternatives. It cost them probably 80 grand in lost margin and damaged customer relationships. Now, we document all of this. For every critical input to your business, who's the primary supplier? Who's the backup? What are the terms? Who's the emergency contact? Where's the contract? When does it renew? What's the pricing structure? The risk? Are you actively executing due diligence on your vendors and supply chain to reduce your risk? How much do you know about the key vendors? Supply chain disruptions can paralyze your business. This is a huge risk, and the entire process needs to be documented. Additionally, you could overpay because you don't have documented pricing to reference. You lose institutional knowledge when someone leaves, and you can't effectively negotiate because you don't have organized information. Number 8, access and security protocols. Who has access to what systems? How are passwords managed? What happens when someone leaves? What's your data backup process? How do you protect customer information? This is one of those things that people ignore until disaster strikes. I've seen businesses get locked out of their own Facebook accounts because the person who set it up left and nobody else had the credentials. I've seen ransomware attacks cripple companies because they had no backup process. I've seen customer data leaked because there were no clear access controls. Here's what needs to be documented. Every system your business uses, who has access at what level, where are credentials stored securely, what's your process for granting and especially revoking access, how often are backups run and where are they stored, what's your incident response plan if you suspect a breach. I had a client in healthcare, so they had regulatory compliance requirements, and they discovered during an audit that 5 former employees still had access to their patient database. That's a violation that could have resulted in massive fines. We implemented a termination checklist that includes immediate system access revocation, and we do quarterly access reviews to make sure nobody has access to data or systems they shouldn't. The risk? You lose access to critical systems. You suffer a data breach and face legal consequences. You can't recover from a system failure because you have no backups. Former employees can cause damage. This is the unglamorous stuff that protects you from catastrophic loss. Number 9, emergency and business continuity planning. What happens if you're unavailable? What if your location floods? What if your main system goes down? What tasks absolutely must happen versus what can wait? Most small business owners are the single point of failure in their businesses. If you get hit by a bus, metaphorically or literally, does your business survive the week? Can someone access your bank accounts to make payroll? Do people know who to contact? What's the priority order of operations? I'll tell you about a restaurant owner I worked with. Small place, good food, loyal customers. The owner had a heart attack. Not fatal, thank God, but he was in the hospital for a week and recovery at home for another month. His spouse tried to keep things running but didn't know the suppliers, couldn't access the business bank account, didn't know which employees were authorized to make decisions, didn't even know the Wi-Fi password to access their point-of-sale system. The restaurant barely survived. They lost staff because paychecks were delayed. They ran out of ingredients because orders weren't placed. Regular customers thought they'd closed permanently, all because there was no continuity plan. The document doesn't have to be complex. It's essentially, if I'm unavailable, here's who can do what. Here's where critical information is stored. Here's the priority order of what must happen. Here's who to contact in different scenarios. Think of it as leaving instructions for someone to run your house while you're away, but for your business. The risk? A personal emergency becomes a business emergency. You can't take time off because the business literally can't function without you there. Or worse, something happens to you and your business, maybe your family's main asset, just evaporates. And finally, number 10, your sales process and lead management. How do leads get captured? Who follows up with them and when? What's your qualification process? What does your sales conversation look like? When do you discount and by how much? How do you close? A lot of small business owners think sales is an art that can't be systematized. And sure, there's relationship building and intuition involved, but the fundamentals absolutely can and should be documented. I worked with a B2B service company where they had 3 salespeople, and each one had completely different approaches and completely different close rates. One person was crushing it, the other 2 were struggling. We shadowed the successful person and documented what they were doing. The questions they asked, how they positioned value, how they handled objections, their follow-up cadence. We trained the other salespeople on this approach, not to make them robots, but to give them a framework. Their close rates went up dramatically. We also implemented a CRM and a documented process for how leads get entered, who follows up when, what the stages are, what has to happen to move a lead forward. The result? Fewer leads fell through the cracks, the sales cycle became more predictable, and revenue became more consistent instead of feast or famine. The risk of not having this documented? Sales are random and inconsistent. Your revenue is dependent on one superstar salesperson. Leads get ignored or mishandled. You can't scale because you can't reliably convert prospects. And you probably leave money on the table because you're discounting when you don't need to or missing opportunities to upsell to your current customer base. Okay, so we've covered all 10. Customer onboarding, financial close, cash flow and collections, hiring and onboarding, complaint resolution, quality control, vendor management, access and security, emergency planning, and sales process. Now, here's the thing I want you to understand. I'm not saying you need to create 50-page manuals for each of these. That's not realistic, and honestly, it may not be helpful. What I'm saying is, depending on the complexity of your business and its processes, you need clear, simple, accessible documentation that someone could follow if they needed to. Most of these should or could be 1 to 3 pages. Key steps, who's responsible, decision criteria, important contacts or resources, and maybe some common exceptions or troubleshooting tips. That's it. And you don't have to do this all at once. That's overwhelming, and you won't do it. Pick one, the one that's causing you the most pain or the most risk right now, and spend an hour this week documenting it. Just one. Then next week, pick another one. In 10 weeks, you'll have the fundamentals documented. That's not a huge time investment, but the return is massive. You sleep better. You can actually take a vacation. Your business runs more smoothly. Your team feels more confident. Mistakes decrease. Quality improves. And you spend less time firefighting and more time growing. From a risk management perspective, which is my world, these 10 documents are your insurance policy against operational failure. They're how you build a business that's resilient, scalable, and not entirely dependent on your personal presence every single day. Before you go, if you found this valuable, subscribe to the channel. I drop new videos every week on practical small business risk management, the stuff they don't teach you in business school. In my work as a chief risk officer and running my own company, I developed a process documentation framework that I've used with organizations from large banks to tech and small startups. It's a structured approach that makes this whole thing less overwhelming and ensures you're capturing what matters. I'm considering creating a detailed guide or maybe even a workshop around this framework. Would that be valuable to you? Let me know in the comments. And if you've got specific questions about how to document a particular process in your business, ask me. I might not get to every single one, but I will read them all, and the common questions often turn into future videos or resources I create for the channel. Now, I know some of you are watching this and thinking, Scott, this makes total sense, but I have no idea how to translate this into documentation that actually works for my specific business. I get it. Generic templates only get you so far because your business has unique quirks, unique workflows, unique risks. That's actually why I do bespoke process documentation work or consulting with select clients. I am someone who's done this at every level from startup to Fortune 500. I will look at your actual operations, interview your team, and create customized documentation that fits how you really work, not some theoretical ideal. If you're interested in having me help you build these 10 critical processes specifically for your business, drop a comment below saying "process help," and I'll reach out with details. Fair warning, I only take on a few clients at a time because this work is intensive and personalized, but if you're serious about protecting your business, let's talk. Remember, you don't need luck, you need planning, structure, and knowledge, and you don't have to figure this out alone. Thanks for watching, protect your business, document your processes, and I'll see you in the next one.